place here tonight. So members of council, staff, or the public may be participating virtually or in person. We have regrets from Councillor Hanson, but Councillors Murray and Back are joining us virtually this evening. And so you have 6 of the 7 members of council present for this evening's meeting. If Councillor Hanson wants to participate in the ultimate decision, he's going to have to review all of the notes and discussions that we've had in order to be able to participate in that vote. But in that regard, you have 6 of 7 council members present to hear your dialogue this evening. So I have a bit of a script that I'm going to go to before we get to the initial presentation from staff. And it says, as advertised, we're holding a public hearing for amendments to the zoning bylaw and a public meeting for amendments to the business license bylaw in relation to short-term rentals and bed and breakfast. As the 2 bylaws are closely related, we'll hold the public hearing and public meeting concurrently. This means anyone who feels that their interest is affected by either bylaw will be afforded the opportunity to speak. This public hearing and public meeting are being convened pursuant to Section 464 of the Local Government Act and Section 59 of the Community Charter, and are being held in a hybrid meeting format, meaning there's a combination of in-person electronic participation by some or all members of council, staff, and the public. The chair has established the following rules for this hearing and meeting. Following the staff presentation, we will go through the established speakers list. At the end of the speakers list, the chair may call for other speakers not on the speakers list. You will have 5 minutes to address council for a first time. Begin your remarks to council by stating your name and giving an approximate address. After everyone who wishes to speak has spoken once, speakers will then be allowed 1 additional 5-minute opportunity. Any additional presentations will only be allowed at the discretion of the chair. Please do not repeat information from your previous presentations and ensure your comments remain focused on the bylaws under consideration this evening. If you've provided a written submission, there's no need to read it as it will have been seen by the council. You may summarize or briefly reiterate the highlights of your submission, but ensure your comments pertain to the bylaws under consideration at this hearing and meeting. All members of the audience are asked to be respectful of one another as diverse opinions are expressed. Council wishes to hear everyone's views in an open and impartial forum. Some important notes about public hearings. Council is here to listen to the public, not to debate the merits of the bylaws. Council may ask clarifying questions. The corporate officer has a binder containing documents and submissions related to the bylaws, which council has received and which you are welcome to review. This is available on the table next to the door and online at dnb.org/agenda. Everyone at the hearing and meeting will be provided an opportunity to speak. If necessary, we will continue on a second night. At the conclusion of the public input, council may request further information from staff, which may or may not require an extension of the hearing and meeting. Or council may close the hearing, after which council should not receive further new information from the public. Finally, please note that the public hearing and meeting is being held via Zoom and recorded in accordance with the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Now I'll call on the Deputy Corporate Officer to read the bylaw into the record.
District of North Vancouver rezoning bylaw 1451, bylaw 8734 proposes to amend the zoning bylaw in general terms by replacing the definition of bed and breakfast, adding definitions for principal residence, property host, and short-term rental accommodation, adding a new subsection 405A4 to Part 4, prohibiting bed and breakfast use in a dwelling unit in combination with short-term rental accommodation, adding regulations for short-term rentals, permitting only in a dwelling unit in the host's principal residence or either 1 secondary suite or 1 coach house, but not both, only 1 short-term rental accommodation permitted on a single family property, definition of secondary suite to include a locked off or self-contained unit which contains or provides for cooking, sleeping, and bathroom facilities, prohibition of short-term rental accommodations in permitted caretaker dwelling units, non-market housing units, accessory buildings other than coach houses, vehicles, or trailers, prohibition of short-term rental accommodation in combination with a bed and breakfast, maximum of 6 guests, no more than 1 booking per dwelling unit at one time, maximum of 28 days, requirement for 1 off-street parking stall, and a clarification that short-term rental accommodation is not a home occupation. Adding a short-term rental accommodation to the list of permitted accessory uses in Part 5 residential zone regulations, and adding designated expressions and fines for ticketing violations of the bed and breakfast and short-term rental provisions in the zoning bylaw. Business License Bylaw 4567/1974, Amendment Bylaw 8665/2023, Amendment 53, proposes to amend the Business License Bylaw in general terms by adding or updating definitions for bed and breakfast operator, principal residence, short-term rental accommodation, and short-term rental operator, adding regulations for short-term rentals and bed and breakfasts, emergency contact information requirement, information on relevant District of North Vancouver bylaws requirement, must provide a valid business license number in advertising, listings, or promotional material. Licensed inspector must be provided with a written description of the proposed rental and detailed plans of proposed off-street parking prior to operating. Requirement to post a fire safety plan by all entrances and exits and have a smoke alarm and fire extinguisher on each floor, as well as a carbon monoxide detector on each floor that contains a gas appliance. Testing, inspection, and maintenance requirements for life safety equipment, and requirement to produce inspection, testing, and maintenance records to the inspector upon request.
Great. Thank you very much. Just before we go to the staff presentation, noted that we've already gone through the pile of documents we have at the front. We're going to have some more printed and handed out, but it is just a representation of the slideshow that we're just about to show here with the staff presentation. So I'll ask Holly to now come up and set up in the middle and seek Tina Atva's opening comments, please.
Thank you very much, Mayor Little. Good evening, everybody, members of council, community members. My name is Tina Atva. I'm the Director of Community Planning and Housing. Tonight's public hearing and public meeting are milestones in the process of how to consider the best way to manage short-term rentals in the district. And we have had the benefit of several meetings over time to hear different perspectives and input. And in response, the district has tailored and modified its proposed regulations, including responding to the province's legislation, which came into effect or was introduced in late 2023. I would like to note that some of these more recent changes were as recent as last month on March 3rd, when council reviewed 2 options for short-term rentals and selected option 2. So these are the 2 bylaws that the clerk read out, the zoning bylaw amendment and the business license bylaw amendment, which are the subject of these meetings. And this is to allow short-term rental in a principal residence or a vacant secondary suite with a maximum of 1 license. What I'd like to do just briefly before Holly Adams begins, if I may, is identify some of the key themes through this process, things that we heard, which really did help shape the zoning bylaw and the business license bylaw amendments. First off, being balanced and fair. These short-term proposed regulations apply to different housing types and different circumstances. And we heard that that balance and fairness was very important to the community. There are also checks and balances related to safety and compatibility in our community. Another, the importance of long-term rental housing. These bylaw amendments propose to minimize some of those potential impacts, for example, by limiting the number of guests and license and days and bookings, among other things. And together with our partners, the district has already reallocated some of the tax revenue we're eligible for from online accommodation providers to the district's Affordable Housing Reserve Fund. We heard it's important to have the tools and to be ready to manage short-term rentals, and we're doing that with proposed business licenses and fines. The province has its registry system, which many will know about, which is coming into effect May 1st. The province also has a compliance and enforcement unit, and there will be information sharing between these 2 levels of government. All of this is very time sensitive. We're doing all we can to make sure that business licenses can be processed to meet the provincial May 1st registration deadline. That is subject to council making their decisions on these bylaws. If second and third reading are provided to these bylaws, to the zoning bylaw, then staff will be ready to take in business license applications the following day, which could be April 15th. And finally, adaptability. This is our first time with short-term rental regulations. If they are adopted, we know that we will have perhaps got some things right and maybe not all of them, but we think this is a balanced and fair suite of regulations, and with staff will monitor the change from what is now an unregulated use to an authorized use, as well as look at the uptake and impacts. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Ms. Atva. Ms. Adams. Try again.
How about now? Perfect. Good evening, Mayor and Council and members of the public. My name is Holly Adams and I work in the Community Planning Department. So tonight's presentation is to provide an overview of the bylaws, which are under consideration as part of introducing our short-term rental regulatory framework. So this is, again, an amendment to the zoning bylaw and the business license bylaw. This presentation will be about 5 minutes. So short-term rentals are not a permitted use, as mentioned, or business practice in the district. However, they exist in about 3% of our total housing units. We've seen the number of listings fluctuate over time, depending on tourism demand. And we've also consistently seen that most listings are for an entire house rather than a room within a home that you would see with a traditional bed and breakfast use. Council has had a series of workshops and meetings on this topic. As I'll touch on a bit later, in October 2023, the province passed its Short-Term Rental Accommodations Act, after which a suite of provincial tools and changes have come into effect. And these strengthen local government's ability to enforce short-term rental bylaws, to have more oversight in regulating short-term rentals, and with the overall goal to return short-term rentals to the long-term rental market. So most recently, the zoning bylaw and business license bylaw, along with the other proposed regulations, part of the larger short-term rental framework, were given first reading on March the 3rd. Okay, so moving to the first bylaw for discussion tonight, the zoning bylaw. So the zoning bylaw regulates the use of short-term rentals. If approved, it would allow short-term rentals and dwelling units across the district with certain regulations and restrictions in place. So to highlight the key regulations, there's introduction of a principal residence requirement, which is a provincial requirement we must follow, meaning the property host must live on the property offering the short-term rental. Short-term rentals would not be permitted in non-market or caretaker housing, also not in accessory dwelling units other than a coach house. So that includes things like RVs or trailers. Also not in combination with a bed and breakfast in the same dwelling unit to reduce cumulative impacts. There's also a couple of license caps, including having up to 6 patrons at a time, and each stay cannot exceed 28 consecutive days. And last, that 1 off-street parking space is required per license. So these regulations were carefully considered and selected based on best practice, needing to meet provincial legislation, previous council and public input, and trying to strike a balance between permitting short-term rentals, but also reducing and managing potential negative impacts on neighborhoods. Okay, so one of the key concepts being introduced is principal residence. So principal residence, again, simply means the place where someone lives most of the time, conducts their daily affairs, and you can't have more than 1 principal residence. So on the left, this shows a typical house where the owner lives upstairs in the main dwelling unit. It's their principal residence. So they may have a license over this main portion of the house, and they can have people come stay while they're away, while they're gone, or they could have certain bedrooms occupied by guests while they're home. So since our proposed regulations also include a cap of 1 license per single family property, this is all that this property could have. Then on the right, this again shows the typical house with the owner living upstairs. That's the principal residence. This is showing the other option available, which is to rent out an accessory dwelling unit. So this is showing a secondary suite having a license, but it could either be a coach house or a secondary suite. So the suite or coach house can be vacant. It does not have to be anyone's principal residence. So again, we have a cap of 1 license. So this is all that this property could have. So ultimately, it's up to the owner which unit on their property has the license, but only 1 dwelling unit can be licensed. And if it's an accessory dwelling unit, it does not have to be occupied. And just to note, this shows a single family property situation, but short-term rentals would also be permitted in multifamily properties. So something like a condo tower, each condo could have its own license with permission from the Strata Council. So jumping to the other bylaw being considered tonight, the business license bylaw. So this bylaw regulates the business licensing aspect of short-term rentals. So each short-term rental would need a business license in order to operate, and this license number must be displayed on all advertising. A suite of safety requirements are being introduced, and having an emergency contact available, typically that would be the owner, would be introduced for both short-term rentals and bed and breakfast. Prior to getting a business license, the owner would need to fill out a declaration form stating the safety requirements have been met. And any tenant would need permission from the owner, and any unit in a strata building would need permission from the strata. And last, an approved parking plan would also be required prior to that business license being issued. Okay, there's been a lot of questions about the new provincial registration deadlines and how the timing fits in with the district introducing its own regulations. So although this is somewhat outside of the bylaws being considered tonight, I do want to mention that staff are preparing for business license intake starting as early as April 15th. This would allow enough time for operators to receive evidence that they've made a business license application with the district. which they then can take and upload to the provincial registry system. And so this would allow for a provincial registration number to be issued by the province by the May 1st deadline. Applicants will need to sign an acknowledgement that submitting their business license application to the district doesn't guarantee bylaw approval and that they will get a license. I'll also mention we're in close contact with the province who supports this approach, and we'll be looking for that acknowledgement of application from operators within the district. If second and third bylaw reading is given on the suite of short-term rental bylaws, adoption would be at a separate meeting due to ministry sign-off being required on the zoning bylaw. And final item here, staff have been conducting community outreach to raise awareness that regulations are being considered and those key provincial deadline dates through our dedicated webpage, social media, responding to any inquiries, and also the community report, which is soon to go out, I believe this week. And if bylaws are adopted, additional outreach would also be undertaken. So that concludes my presentation, and staff are available to take any questions.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Ms. Adams. We're going to move into the public input portion of the meeting. And so we do have a speakers list that was opened up in the clerk's office ahead of time. I only have 2 speakers that have signed up to speak so far. And so after that, we're just going to work our way around the room, and virtual respondents, if participants, if you want to raise your virtual hands at that time, we'll populate the list until we run through everybody who wants to speak at the hearing. So the first speaker I have is Steve Weller, followed by M. Kaler. So Steve Weller, I'll ask you to come up to the table in the middle here. Welcome, and when you're comfortable, you have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Doesn't matter which side I work from.
No, we've got microphones on both sides. Should be fine.
First of all, thank you for the opportunity to speak. Second of all, I'm glad that the district has finally established, is in the process of establishing some rules to regulate Airbnbs, which
Microphone a little louder. It's on,
louder?
but we'll get, how about
How's
that?
that? Is that better?
That's better. There we go.
Okay. If you can't hear me, speak up.
You're good.
Okay. So, okay, I'll start from the beginning. So, first of all, thank you for addressing this issue and laying out some guidelines, which I think are pretty fair. I have a couple of questions or concerns. One, obviously, is that we can only apply on April 15th. The province has got a deadline of May 1st. Are we going to be able to get things done in a timely manner? Second thing is that, you know, in my own personal situation, is that we've got a suite designated, but we're also looking at, you know, maybe in the future, leaving our house for 2 or 3 months at a time. Can we flip our license back and forth between those two? I don't know even how to describe, between the suite and the house. Can we do that, or do we have to have a different license, or how does that work, or do we know?
So just to be clear, so this is a public hearing where we
Okay.
hear your comments and
Fine.
concerns.
So I guess then my comment or concern would be, I'd like to have that opportunity to flip back and forth.
Understood. Now,
So,
I do think it's important for us to address the question of the due date. And so I am going to
Yeah.
ask staff to give a clarification on that. So I think one of the requirements from the province is that you just have to have had the permit started by the due date. And we're confident that we will be able to manage that. Can I get a clarification from staff on the timing?
I see a lot of heads nodding over there. Is that a good sign? Okay,
We'll
cool.
get it on the record, actually. If we can get a microphone on, I'd love a response
That's
to
fine.
that.
I'm good with the head nodding. So I guess the only other thing,
I'm not. I'd
Okay,
love it on the
fine.
record. So if I can.
you're the
just get-
details guy.
So that's correct. So we're looking to take in business license applications starting April 15th. And then we've been working with the province, who has let us know that that 2-week period should be sufficient time for just to receive that acknowledgement of receipt that an application has been made. You don't need the full business license to be issued. We have until August 1st to do that.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you for the
And then
question.
the other thing I would say is that I think this is a really positive step. Looking in the neighborhood that I live in, Deep Cove, it's interesting that there's a number of people from what I would call my cohort who are really faced with the challenge. Do they downsize, or do they try and find a way to generate some income for their property? And also a lot of young families that are considering, as an alternative to having a secondary suite and the full-time renter, different demands from their family, that this is a Airbnb or platforms like that give you an opportunity to generate some income in your house. So that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Steve Weller. Next, I have M. Kaler. Is that a virtual participant? We're just going to take a look at the virtual list. Yes, I see M. Kaler on the virtual list. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can. I'm going to get you to speak in a nice loud voice, though. It's coming a little bit soft, but when you're ready, you have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. My comments are really similar to what you just heard, and I think it's very similar to a lot of people's concerns. First off, I think I just want to mention that people that are doing short-term rental, they're just basically trying to pay the cost of living in District of North Vancouver. As you may know, the price, the cost of living here has increased like 300% over the last couple of years. And it's due also to policies that couldn't actually control that affordability for housing. And that's the topic that everybody's talking about for a long time. I'm a bit disappointed to see that you're not necessarily following exactly what the province is requiring for the resident of British Columbia by limiting just one unit, because the ability to go on vacation and be able to rent the other part helps actually a lot to have vacations. And I believe after we invest so much time, like in my own circumstances, we accumulate 4 jobs to be able to afford the mortgage, the taxes, any issues that is happening in the house that needs to be fixed. It's a lot, it's exhausting. And I see that we're taking this decision because there is some fear that this will actually impact rental affordability. So first off, it needs to be proven. From the research I have done, there is like very limited impact on the number of Airbnb listing and the price of the rent, even in extreme cases like Barcelona, for example. So I will be really curious to see if there is any evidence of that for District of North Vancouver to take such a decision that goes against what the province is recommending. And the second part of my comment is about basically the short-term things that needs to happen in the next couple of weeks, because obviously we count on short-term rental for the next following weeks and months to be able to pay our everything, basically mortgage and everything that is around, even like medical bills and everything. Otherwise, it's very difficult to do it. And obviously, we already have some booking in there. And from my understanding, you're actually starting to collect information, even though we don't even have a bylaw to allow or not allow short-term rental. So I'm very curious about if this is actually lawful to collect data from the residents where we don't even have a bylaw to support that. If the district is mandated to do that, even if there is no bylaw to support it. And finally, I think there is also a very simple solution that can be done very quickly. It's just to, like other cities and district actually mentioned, they just actually provide a letter to basically the public and the host to not require a business license to be able to have a registration to the province. So it's a very simple solution, doesn't need to deploy anything, and gives the time to the district to think about the bylaw and refine it, pass the bylaw, and then implement the system. This will be, from my perspective, a much better and efficient way to do it, and also a fair relief for the people who are actually trying to survive in there. So that's the end of my comments.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments, M. Kaler. Okay, looking around the room, I see a hand in the front here. Maybe I get a couple more if there are more. Okay, come on up. And if you could start with your name and approximate address or neighborhood to help us keep track, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. My name's Mackenzie Olson and my house is in Lynn Valley. I just want to express that there is a big need for sort of like a short, long-term furnished rentals. Basically, we're doing sort of a hybrid approach, and this is what the concern is for me, trying to reduce the flexibility with this type of rental. Most of the families that we've been renting to are in situations, for example, I'll just go over some of the tenants that we've had, the short-term renters. They're potentially coming from out of province to help a family member who's been in the hospital. They're going through a renovation due to flood or fire. They've just relocated to the area, either from another province, for example, or a different country, and they need time to get to know the different neighborhoods before they commit to a long-term rental. Their furniture is, in storage somewhere. They're potentially here from work. We've had some people from Alberta who are working, to help our economy, and they need a kitchen and laundry. They don't want to live in a hotel. And then there's also people, of course, who are divorcing and separating. So there's a huge need in the marketplace for furnished rentals. Now, their dates don't always fall on the first and end of the month. The dates typically tend to be quite flexible and varied. And it's really difficult for a person trying to provide these accommodations to always align exactly with certain dates. So I may have someone book from the 7th of a month and then want to exit on the 15th of the following month. And then, we want to then try to get somebody else for another, let's just say 30 days or more than 28 days as a long-term rental, but then we'll have this sort of space in between. So and we can't really afford to keep it vacant. That's the other problem, is affordability. The other reason that for our personal situation, we prefer this type of approach versus just putting a long-term tenant in there is we have a lot of out-of-province family. And so my partner, for example, his mother she'll come from Alberta and stay with us for a period of time, but we can't keep the dwelling empty. We need help to pay the mortgage. And then with the first speaker, we also do like the flexibility that if we are traveling ourselves, it helps us sort of, pay for where we need to go, or just again, helps us pay with our bills to be able to switch the different dwellings. So whether we're renting the main house or the suite. So we just want you to, consider all those factors for people who are offering this type of accommodation, that it really is a need in housing for these short or long-term furnished rentals. And then the 28-day is a little bit of a conflict too. I just find it's a little bit limiting because, you may have somebody who's had this flood and it's like they need it for 3 weeks, but they don't really know how long the renovations are going to take. And then they'll typically ask to extend. And then again, when we do have those 30 days, trying to fill that gap and that space in between. So I just want the council to consider all those factors. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mackenzie Olson. Is there someone else who would like to address the hearing? Are there any virtual participants? If you'd like to raise your virtual hand. Oh, I do see Corey Cost with the virtual hand. We're going to move you over to be a panelist. And then I'll come to you next, okay? Okay, and then we have another.
Good evening, Your Worship.
Hi, Corey Kosk. I'm going to ask you to speak nice and loudly. It's coming in a little bit
Okay.
soft, so I'll get you right in front of the microphone. But welcome. You have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Yes, my name is Corey Cost. I live near Edgemont Village, and I'd like to bring out some issues. The first one that a number of others have already expressed, the limitation of the 28 days. Technically, you are allowed to have consecutive 28-day bookings. They can abut and done by the same people or by a different member of the family registering under a different name So the 28-day limits are not really there. If one is just willing to maybe not obey the spirit of the law, but the legality of the law. I noticed that short-term rentals all require a business license, as does the bed and breakfast, and another category, the so-called home-based business, which is not discussed in the report as far as I know. And I'm not sure that you can have a home-based business at the same time as you can have a short-term rental and or a bed and breakfast. As for smoke and carbon monoxide detectors, I've just refreshed all the ones in my home and find that 1 per 4 is the minimum you require, but I find that woefully inadequate. It should be done in every room that can be occupied. And I suggest that the smoke detector portion be amended accordingly to make it safer for both the residents and others. There should be some mechanism to easily file a complaint by a nearby homeowner about the operation of these units, both short-term rentals and bed and breakfasts. Especially since the owner doesn't seem to be required to be on site. So how do you, who do you talk to, which is always the first stage. I noticed that second and third readings allow filing of an application. But what happens if the readings are rescinded by council? What's the path forward then? The provincial registration by May the 1st, what happens when you build new homes in the district which haven't registered by that time, but open shortly or maybe quite a ways into the future? How are you handling future homes that want to apply for either a short-term rental or a bed and breakfast? So those are just a few little items that remain unaddressed by the report as far as I can tell. I'm neither for or against these kinds of facilities, but what I am for is the proper process to deal with problems when they occur. And I think the protection of adjacent residential homes is as important to me as the by the proper operations of these units. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Corey Cost. Call on the fellow here if you want to come on up. Appreciate if you could start with your name and approximate address or neighborhood.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Roberts. I live in Pemberton Heights here. Oh, how was that? No. Hello. There we go. Oh, got to get really close. Okay. Daniel Roberts, Pemberton Heights. I've operated an Airbnb for approximately 4.5 years. I agree with our previous residents speaking today on the 28 days being short for giving us the flexibility as homeowners, as really running a small business as an Airbnb to be able to afford to live in this very beautiful area. The types of renters, yes, we see 3, we see 7, we see 10-day bookings, summertime, 2-3 weeks. But it also over the course of the 4.5 years, I've had multiple home renovations. Renovations are never what a contractor says they're going to take. They're often 6, 8, 10 weeks. We've had recently from the floodings and the repair work for that. We've had over the winter, we've had ski instructors coming from to work on the local hills. Well, it's not 28 days that they're here for. So I do please encourage you to relook at the 28 days. I'm almost switching the hats here. As for a living, I do sustainability consulting and enforcement of policies and so forth in new buildings construction. So when I see your list of conditions for us as residents to abide by, we definitely want to be in the good books with you and with our neighbors as well. I know today is not a workshop. You had the list of requirements for us to implement. The devil's in the details when we're trying to enforce that, or not try to work through it. So I encourage to look at the list and either give a little bit clearer guidance when it's time, the appropriate time to us as residents. For example, you mentioned the fire safety plan, what is required for that. I work in the industry, I know what that means, but to the average person, they probably do not know what that means. The other one was regarding the testing, and I just saw that line and I didn't read it in full. I went too fast. What is required for testing? Are we talking about fire extinguishers? Is that it? Or are we treating this like a new build, new construction where you have to go and test life and safety features? We need a little bit more guidance to help play by the laws that are given to us. Finally, I really hope, like everybody here, that this does move forward. The previous person via video call there who mentioned, what if this doesn't go through? I hope we do not get that far. If we do, I please encourage council to figure a stopgap if we need it. We have 15-30 days here to be able to afford our places where we live. As a single income household, this is critical for me to pay mortgage. I wouldn't be living in District of North Vancouver and having my business here if it weren't for that Airbnb and the additional revenues that we could secure. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you for your presentation, Daniel Roberts. Next speaker I have is virtual participant Mike Crow. Mike Crow, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Clearly. Welcome. You have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Great. Thank you. And my comments are really just to help strengthen the comments that have been previously made. So I really appreciate the positive momentum this issue has been getting over the last few weeks, and that we're here to address the new bylaws. The 2 points that I wanted to just double down on were the limitation of the 28 days, like the other speakers have shared. I think it's just a factor that would really impact the local community. To one of the ladies' points around the type of guests who we would typically have are a lot of local families dealing with their renovation, dealing with, floods, et cetera, all those issues that have already been raised. It is a limiting factor to supporting the local community, as well as, people who are coming in for visiting, or for families who are coming to visit their other loved ones who don't have the space within their principal residence to host. So just as a key point, I think that is something to relook at, just as we are figuring out this framework as a really important issue to support the community and support the local people who live here and call this place home. And then the second point is definitely needing to ensure that this can move forward before the provincial deadline, just as summer is coming up. And this has been such a critical component of a lot of people's livelihood. Just really encourage we can find a solution before the deadline comes up, as it's a really key piece. But thank you so much for the time and hearing everyone address this issue, and it's a really positive step forward.
Thank you for your comments. Mike Crow. Before I come back to the group, I am just going to check in with staff. We've had a number of questions that have been sent into staff from council members of a clarifying nature. And since they seem to be recurring themes, perhaps it's best to stop and address those clarifying questions. So what I'd like to have is have staff read the question into the record and then read their response into the record. And if you don't have a response on the spot, let us know and we'll see what can be done about that.
Thank you, Your Worship. The first question staff have received is this: can the dwelling flip between the designated space to the whole house if the family is away? And I will ask Holly Adams to answer that, please.
Staff are not proposing to allow switching of location over which the license is issued, meaning a new application would need to be made. We understand the province is also requiring declaration of which part of your dwelling you're putting the license, and is not advised that they're allowing switching of location either.
The second question, Your Worship, confirm the abutting 28 days. And the third question is similar. Can the 28 days be extended as a separate additional booking? And again, Holly Adams, can you confirm the abutting 28 days limits?
Technically, you would have to have left for 1 day. So they were in the process of signing into the provincial portal, which will have booking information. So that'll be our method of checking that along with the province. Do you mind repeating the second part of that question?
Can the 28-day be extended as a separate additional booking?
Well, again, technically, there would have to be like vacating the unit, and then that same person could rebook. That helps answer the question.
Mr. Milburn, additional comments?
Yeah, just to add to that comment, the way the bylaw has been drafted, the intent is that short-term rentals is for that kind of month, a month at a time. So the 28 days reflects that, no more than the shortest month. And longer-term tenancies are permitted. That's perfectly acceptable. That just happens to be a long-term tenancy. It's just not a short-term tenancy, right? And in terms of the way the provincial regulations work, is they've suggested that short-term rentals would have a maximum of 90 days. Okay, so if it's beyond that, then we understand that technically they would have to comply with the Residential Tenancy Act and have a tenancy agreement if you have a long-term stay over 90 days under the provincial rules.
So if I can, to be clear,
yeah,
we don't have an issue with it with a second 28-day booking being of the same people. Maybe the province has a concern about whether the unit is vacated or not, but 90 days is kind of a harder number for us to allow extensions beyond, because then you'd move into the BC rental tenancy regulations. Is that a fair characterization of your response?
That's what we understand.
Okay. All right. Next question, please.
Thank you. Why would we not align with the City of North Vancouver in regards to 90 days? How long is the District of West Vancouver? Sarah Linte will answer this question.
Thank you.
So through your worship, staff did review the appropriate time in which a patron could stay within a short-term rental. And the thinking was to align our days with the way that we currently regulate bed and breakfasts, which is a maximum of 28 days. The City of North Van has reviewed their own regulations and opted with the 90 days, and that is their prerogative. And whereas the District of West Vancouver, they permit their short-term rentals to be no longer than 30 days maximum. So each municipality in their judicious prerogative have determined what is best fit for their community. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, can you clarify the 1st to the 28th of the month? Is it 28 days starting at any time throughout a month? Holly Adams.
It does not have to be at the start of the month. It could start at any time during the month.
Two more questions.
And the effect being rolling over to the next calendar month for the number of days. Yeah, thank you.
Your worship, the next question, whose technicality is the requirement to leave before booking again? Holly Adams.
Well, again, we're in the process of signing on to a provincial portal system. And my understanding, we haven't signed on yet, but my understanding is that it will list each booking and that information will be available for staff.
Thank you. One more question.
Sorry,
At this time,
Mayor Little. Sorry.
Yes, Councillor Murray.
Can
Yeah.
you repeat that?
Ms. Adams, can you repeat that?
Sure. So again, we're in the process of signing up for a provincially managed portal system. And in that system, it lists all the bookings in the District of North Vancouver, and it will have information such as length of stay. So that's one source that staff can use.
Okay, so that was my question. So that's not exactly what I was asking. You said that technically, if we were to stay at 28 days, you would have to leave for a day and then rebook. So is that our technicality in order to have abutting bookings, or is it the province? Like, why can't we allow, as Mr. Cost points out, just rebooking? Like you check out in the morning and you can check back in the afternoon, which is what you would normally do in an Airbnb or a hotel room.
It's the way that our bylaw is written, but might look to.
I just want to be clear. Also, Mr. Milburn, did you say that it's the province's expectation that it be vacated between the two bookings, or is that dictated by provincial regulations or district regulations?
So maybe if I could just provide clarification.
Carolyn, yeah.
The 28 days is the district's regulation. So the expectation is that it would be district bylaw staff that would be responsible for the enforcement of that regulation. And while it is in the spirit of the bylaw that we would want to ensure that there is voluntary compliance amongst the host or operators of these businesses, there is also a gray area. And so on a complaint-driven basis, we may be needed to enforce our bylaws, again, in the spirit of keeping, regulating short-term rentals to ensure that we have a fair and balanced approach to short-term rental and long-term rental supply in our community.
Thank you. One more question at this point. What is the process to extend to 90 days within this bylaw process? This would be the zoning bylaw, as has been mentioned, has the maximum consecutive 28-day stay. So it would be a zoning bylaw amendment to change that process.
Could council give, Mayor Little?
Yeah.
If we decided to go to 90 days, would we just give direction at third reading, second and third, after this hearing? That's what my question is.
Yeah, I think we get the spirit of your question, Councillor Murray. Would that necessitate an additional public hearing, or is that something that's considered within the scope and therefore?
Council can amend the bylaw at second and third reading to reflect a change from 28 days to 90 days if that's council's wish.
Thank you.
Doesn't change a use or density or something else like that. So it's an appropriate possible option at second and third reading. Okay. And that it covers all of the questions that have been submitted so far. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to return back to the public then. Would anybody else virtually or in person? I have an Adam King joining us virtually, and we're going to move Adam over as a panelist.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
I can hear you clearly. Welcome. You have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Thank you. Yeah, so Adam King, live in Upper Lonsdale. Appreciate the opportunity to speak here and really, have similar sentiment to most of the participants or presenters. We've got a young family. We love living in North Vancouver, and we rely on the income. And we also, get a lot of sort of lifestyle value out of the flexibility to, have a secondary suite that we can use for family, use to host friends, while at the same time, generating that income to support our cost of living. Definitely appreciate the steps that are being taken here, and a lot of positive steps to, formally through bylaws allow short-term rentals. As with many of the other participants, it's really that 28-day item that, it seems very subjective, out of line with provincial sort of guidelines. And, I really don't support the, analog of an Airbnb, sorry, a bed and breakfast to a short-term rentals, because as you've heard from the other participants, it is a very different sort of user case of, and quite varied in the types of people, the types of situations, what their needs are, as well as seasonally, as another individual pointed out. The summertime, more transient vacationer folks, like shorter term people. But yeah, there is really quite a wide variety of, the types of people coming from different places and different situations over the winter period, which, is very common to be in excess of 1 month. And before 3 months even came up, I mean, that was, in my own mind, what would be a more appropriate timeline to introduce. I also think that, the like a problem we could run into is that each jurisdiction is different and has their own, stipulated duration. And, the shorter you make that, the more people it's going to turn away, because people coming from out of district in North Vancouver aren't going to appreciate that the bylaws in one location and another are all different. And when they go to book, they're going to have a certain amount of time in mind. And if they enter 6 weeks and it shows no availability, they're going to, turn their attention elsewhere to a place that allows that. Airbnb is, or VRBO. I mean, these are platforms that connect people, and it's going to be very challenging to find, a 5-week renter on Craigslist or some other platform. These are global, recognized brands, where people to go to when they're looking for, like longer term or short term, or 1 month or 2 month or 3 month stays. And that's how is going to sort of connect the customer with the homeowners who can provide that accommodation for them. So yeah, that's all I have to say. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. Adam King. Anybody else like to add their name? Yes, come on up, and then we'll get on the aisle next as well. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 5 minutes to address the hearing. If you could start with your name and approximate neighborhood or address, that did help.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Justin McGuire, and the sort of Princess Park area. My wife, I'm not from this neck of the woods, but I've been here for 15 years. My wife is from Lynn Valley, and we've brought up 4 children here who are now young adults in the mixture of university and just starting to work. And we also have a completely dependent parent that we support completely. And we have a small Airbnb suite, which is crucial for us. And in the summer, to flip that around, as family movement, children movements are not as demanding on accommodation, and we can actually make use of the suite ourselves and rent the house, is actually quite important for us to sort of balance things. So it's coming back to the point that the earlier speakers brought up about having, being able to utilize basically the main house at times of the year, and not in parallel, like it's an either or. And I guess it just seems like this should be a possible thing. There's a complete electronic trail of what's being rented. So if there are a certain number of weeks in the year that you can you make use of what is your Airbnb suite and use it yourself and rent out the other part of the property. I'd just be in support of that. So I just wanted to put that on the record. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And up on the aisle, please, there. Thank you. And when you're comfortable, you have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Thank you very much. My name is Sherry Whitmore. I live in Deep Cove. I wanted to address the 28 days because all along I've written to the council about our need for we use our suite for our family to stay in when they visit, but then we formerly had been renting it out on a short-term basis to make up some income while we're not using it. When these regulations went into effect with the province, starting talking in 23, at that time, we were told basically that what my understanding of the constraints in the district was that anything less than 29 days was a short-term rental and was restricted. But then beyond that, there were no restrictions. What I'm hearing now is that we want to restrict 28 days for short-term rentals. What is a 30-day rental? What is a 40-day rental? At what point is it a long-term rental? It's almost as if we've just now removed the 2 months between 1 and 3 months, removed that as a possibility for a rental. If we're saying that a long-term rental, I guess this is my question, is a long-term rental 90 days minimum, or is a long-term rental 29 days minimum? So if we, and then the second question with that is, when we're saying short-term rental, does that mean listing on Airbnb or VRBO? Because that's not the only way to get shorter terms, like not a long-term tenant, but someone who would come for a month, 2 months. Those are difficult to get on, different. I guess I'm trying to understand. It almost seems like we're talking about short-term rentals as being a listing on Airbnb or VRBO, in which case, if you are renting long-term, but you're advertising on VRBO or Airbnb for something longer than 28 days, are we saying now that that would be illegal in the district? That's my question.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Would anybody else like to address the hearing? I'm going to go here and then in the back, and then I'll come up front here. So yes, please.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I just wanted to ask a question of how will you monitor this short-term rental?
I need to get your name and approximate address for the record.
Okay, my name is Michael and I live on Riverside Drive. So my question is, I hear a lot about 28 days restrictions. And I just wonder how is the district going to monitor this 28 days rentals? So is the licensors or the licensees, when they advertise their listings and when they get tenants to book for like 28 days, would the district know about this booking, or how do you monitor this ongoing sort of bookings with all these business licenses operating in the district? That's my question.
Thank you very much for your presentation. In the back.
Mayor Little. My name's Jeanette Nelson. I live in the Mount Seymour Parkway area. I have to say I'm a little bit confused now. Is it that if we book for 28 days and then on the 29th day, they have to leave and then come back and rebook? Or is my understanding with Airbnb, I have booked the 28 days, and if people wanted to extend for another month, we extended it. And maybe the contractor would his contract would extend another month and sometimes up to 5 months. So are you saying that at this point we can book for 28 days? We have to leave, ask them to leave and then come back? This is confusing. The other point is for these people to book, it's very to exit and then come back in. The cost for the Airbnb has to pay, he has to pay more money again. He has to pay all those taxes, the new fees, and all of it. So this is not really addressing the issues that need to be addressed. And I'm confused now. What are we doing here? It's just confusing. And I think this needs to be clarified that if people can book, now are you talking about 90 days? Is that the maximum that they can book? And then they have to leave and then put a new name in to extend their contract? Like, this is not the best. It's it's confusing. And we're all just simply trying to survive here. Pay our taxes, the secondary suite, all the added taxes and water bills and all of it. And now in terms of the fees, look, we pay an Airbnb fee, we pay a fee here, we pay to the government. Where does it end? You know, it's not really helping people that need short-term. And yeah, it's confusing. Is short-term less than 28 or 28 days plus? And where does the other part come in? And it doesn't sound like you can do it anyways. So I think you really need to take a good look at this. And thank you for your time. Not intended to be disrespectful, but this is confusing.
No, that's fine. Thank you very much for your comments, Jeanette Nelson. I think I had a speaker raise their hand over here. Yeah, come on up. And then I will take a break and check back in with staff to see what they're prepared to respond to any clarifying questions from the council.
Hi, my name is Hamid Koshneves, Lynn Valley. And I also have a question about 28 days. I think another speaker alluded to that. Okay, you can do some workaround and rebook the place, but I want to take a case of somebody coming here for being a nurse or doing surgery for 35 days. They're coming with a dog. They want to eat. They want to don't go big dog. They don't want to go to a hotel. And you're saying they cannot find any listings like that on Airbnb. So they go to Airbnb. They don't know that you could reserve for 28 days and then maybe extend it. That's not the issue. They cannot find any listings on Airbnb if they're from 28 days to 90 days. There's nothing they can find. And to me, that's not being hospitable to those kind of people in the district. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Just check back in with staff. We've had a couple of questions come in from council. Maybe we can update those questions, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. This question, what is a long-term rental defined by the province? More than 90 days? And Zaralyn Tay will answer this question.
Through Your Worship, the way that we would define a long-term rental in the district is effectively that anything beyond the 28-day period, we would consider that a long-term rental. Now, long-term rentals and short-term rentals are governed by two different acts. And so where there is a long-term rental, there's two provisions in which the owner would be a landlord and the patron would, in this case, be a tenant. And they can be rented either on a month-to-month basis, which has flexibility in terms of the duration, as it states month-to-month, or under a fixed term, which typically would be up to a year. So the provincial definition of short-term rental accommodation services, and I'll read it straight from the legislation, states here, means that the service of accommodation in the property of a property host in exchange for a fee that is provided to members of the public for a period of time of less than 90 consecutive days or another prescribed period, if any, but does not include a prescribed accommodation service. So even the definition under the province is quite flexible.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. The next question for Holly Adams are, how are the regulations enforced?
Through your worship, so there's a number of different measures that staff are taking. For example, submission of a declaration form, which the operator checks off that they're meeting our regulations. There's things like proof of principal residency that's all required as part of the application process. We're producing guidance materials for operators to refer to, which will help them understand our regulations. The provincial registry will also assist, and that operators need to have that valid business license from the district in order to get that registry number. And then there's a process now in place where local governments can request to the province to take down listings if they're not meeting our own regulations. And then last, there's a new provincial enforcement and compliance unit.
Mayor Little, could I just ask for clarification on the 90 days?
There's another 90 days question that's been submitted. Does it answer your question?
I'm looking at the question. Okay, let's start with that and see.
Sure.
Thank you, Your Worship. This question is 90 days, a hard cap instituted by the province. Does anything beyond 90 days fall under the Residential Tenancy Act? Sarah Linte.
Through your worship. Through your worship. So under the legislation, it is quite clear that 90 days, 90 consecutive days rather, is a hard cap set by the province. In terms of whether or not anything beyond the 90 days would then fall under the Residential Tenancy Act, there's ambiguity in that. However, as mentioned, long-term rentals can either be on a month-to-month basis, in which there's flexibility as to whether that is, say, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, or beyond, or a fixed term, which is typically, again, a year.
But they would have the rental protection provisions identified under the Residential
Yes,
Tenancy
yes.
Act,
So
which short-term rentals
do
do
not.
not fall under.
Yes.
I think that's important to them. Okay, Councillor Muri, you had a question. Does it go beyond what's just been staff have just responded to?
No, thank you, Mayor Little. That confirms that 90 days and less would be considered a short-term rental. Anything beyond that would fall under the Rental Tenancy Act and be considered, in my mind, a long-term rental. So I think we've clarified that. Thank you.
I see there's more questions coming in from staff, from council, just to give staff an opportunity to look over them and get prepared for a response. I'm going to go back to a couple of speakers that we have lined up, virtual participants, Ashley H. and Margaret. We're going to move you over as panelists and then get the benefit of your comments. Ashley H., I can see you're now a panelist. Can you hear me? Ashley H., I can see that you're a panelist. You are muted in the system. If you can unmute and confirm that you can hear me. Okay, we'll come back to Ashley. Margaret.
Can you hear me?
Oh, there. Is that Ashley?
Yes, hi, sorry about that. Some technical difficulties.
No problem at all. It's thank you. Welcome. We have you up for 5 minutes participating in our public hearing. Welcome. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I just have a couple questions, but it's from a different point of view. One of the things that we like as being an Airbnb user is coming to the beautiful North Shore. We prefer the Edgemont area or the Upper Lonsdale, where we can get a bit of a larger house where my 8 members of the family, 2 kids, 2 young infants, and our elderly grandparents, and a small dog can all get together once for our annual trip. So we tend to look for homes that have accommodations for 8 people. Is this new regulation mean that we're going to have 2 people in hotel rooms or rent 2 different places and split up the family? Is it only going to be for 6 people? Is that what the new regulations are?
Okay. Thank you. Do you have any other additional comments?
Also, because rather than staying downtown in 4 separate hotel rooms, we do look for places up in the large, like up in the areas that can accommodate 8 people and a dog. And one of the places that we rented before had 2 kitchens. It had a kitchen where we could make the pies, and we had a kitchen where we could make the turkey. I'm trying to follow along where you have all these separate suites or one suite. So is it these houses that are larger that can accommodate, that have 8 bedrooms, and they have 2 kitchens, they won't be able to, they're only allowed to have 1 kitchen or 1 suite? What is the definition of a suite? And please consider accommodation for larger families just to get together. This is one of our highlights of the year. We have like the FIFA, we have so many things coming up. And it was so hard to just try to find accommodations for 2 small infants under 2. So I know they qualify as persons, but they sleep in a crib and they're basically carried. And then 2 elderly grandparents that actually want to see the grandkids. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll just say I'm starting to notice a bit of a trend that everybody's coming to ask questions. And unfortunately, and this is going to be a bit unsatisfying, the purpose of a public hearing is to hear the benefit of your comments and so that council can help make their decision. It's hard to say this at this point, but the obligation is on interested parties to get informed before they come to the public hearing. And so while I'll do my best to address clarifying questions by the council, it doesn't mean that we're going to exhaustively go through every single question that's asked here. You're going to have to look to the regulations for the fine details in a lot of cases, definitions of suites and all of these other things. That's going to be embedded in the regulation. So if council wants clarifying responses to some of the questions asked, we'll do our best to get a response today. But I know people sometimes have an expectation that it's going to be a question and answer workshop kind of session. Under the provincial regulations, that's not the purpose of the public hearing. The purpose of the public hearing is to hear your views. But I understand if you have big questions, it's hard to share your views. So we're sympathetic, but we're trying to follow the regulations from the province for a public hearing. I did say that I would go to Margaret next. So Margaret online, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Welcome. I can hear you clearly. You have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Okay. I would like to really address the 28 days. I think it's really going to limit when people book on the North Shore and when they go to book on North Vancouver and the city of Vancouver is offering 90 days, but the district is only offering 28 days, those guests will book with the city. So you're really putting the district North Van at a disadvantage. And how Airbnb works, because I do have a place on the island, is that usually, like other speakers have said, when guests are staying and something comes up, their work gets extended, they want to extend the stay. So now you won't be able to allow that. And how a calendar works is somebody might have already come in and booked that 29th day, 30th day. So now those people don't have a place to extend to stay. And also in the district, there are so many people that use Airbnb that are exactly what other speakers have said. They've had a flood. Insurance is looking for them to stay at a place. And insurance, when we had that atmospheric river, I had somebody wanting to come stay at my house, but I didn't do that because it was illegal. When I go on site, it says it's illegal. So I was trying to wait since 2018 for this issue to be resolved by North Van District. And I am so happy to see it moving forward. But I really feel that the 28 days should be in line with the province, which is 90 days. And the understanding of that is people that are doing the short-term rentals don't want to have the long-term tenancies, and once somebody's there for over 3 months, they can have those rights. So therefore, families with children that come back in the summer that are away at university, they can't rent those units out in the winter when they're trying to get extra income, or vice versa. And additionally, just because I've read the provincial guidelines, which might help people understand, if you're going to change what you have submitted to the province from a bedroom, or if you change it to a suite, or if you change it to a house, you have to go through the whole registration process again. I believe it's $335 to re-register. And that's the process that works for changing your home back and forth between, you know. So that's what I'd like to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments. Margaret. Maybe I'll get a couple more and then we'll go back to staff again for clarifications. Is there other first-time speakers? I've got a first-time speaker here and then up on the aisle, and then I'll come to you as well, and in the back. Okay, right here, please. Second and yes, please.
My name is Eddie from Lynn Valley. I wanted to just see this meeting is for short-term rental, not long-term rental. And as you specify, 28 days, not exceed. So if someone book for longer than that, so this rules and regulation is not related to that one. So I think based on your proposal, if someone book for long-term, more than 28 days in one term, so it's not part of this party for short-term rental. It's considered long-term rental. Could be either through portal like Airbnb or whatever. So it's not considered short-term rental and is not any obligation for licensing and other things, right?
Okay.
And my other question is, if they, for example, get the suite for a license for short-term rental, and then in between find some person for more than 28 days, which is long-term rental, so are they allowed to do or to rent the suite for long-term rental during the time they have a license for short-term rental? Are they buy to rent short-term with the license, or they are allowed to get to rent either short-term or long-term?
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Just clarify the terms again. In our view, the province's definition of long-term rental, that being longer than 90 days, is probably what we'll rely on. So just because something is over 28 days, we're not calling it a long-term rental. It's just outside of the scope of our permitted 28-day booking. I think because there's such a material difference between what we're talking about as short-term rentals and all of a sudden falling under the Residential Tenancy Act, long-term rentals are ones that fall under the Rental Tenancy Act. I think that's probably a better distinguishing point than 28 versus 29 days or whatever. It's when it legally changes in status to being under the provincial. Let's consistently call that a long-term rental on it. Okay, and so next I have on the aisle here.
I'm Leanne Whitlock, and I live in Lynn Valley, and I love my neighborhood very much and would not want to impact it any way negatively with running a short-term rental in my home. And sort of to that end, I wanted to advocate for not restricting the licensing to one unit, that's more restrictive than the province and the city of North Van, which have both permitted 2 units within the principal residence. So the reason I think that is it's appropriate to maybe come at that from an enforcement perspective, or that if people are causing an issue or causing a problem, then deal with it. But otherwise, I don't think there's any reason to be so restrictive at the outset. It seems like we've had 900 some odd units operating in the district without much of a problem. Like, I can't believe you come to a public hearing and no one has complained about anything. Like, I didn't even know that was possible. So there's got to be a sense that this is working in the neighborhoods. We've already heard from a lot of people saying how it's working for their family and allowing them to meet the high cost of living in such an amazing place. So on that end, it seems like also serving a social utility and allowing people to have a place to stay, visiting family, I know I've had people coming to go to medical appointments and from other areas of BC. And so we're, as well as of course, tourism that brings dollars to our community that wouldn't be here otherwise. So they all seem like good social objectives to be met with the short-term regulation. And I'm glad that we're moving forward with something, but I would just make my viewpoint that there's no need to be so cautious at the outset when we de facto had a pretty sizable presence here and presumably without disruption. So that was what I wanted to advocate for.
Thank you for your comments, Leanne Whitlock. Front corner here, and then we'll go to the back. If not, you're waving me off, okay? And then we have, and then we have virtual participant Lucia. We'll have you in after that.
Yeah, hello, my name is Robert Chapman and I live in the Mount Seymour Parkway / Deep Cove area. And I'd just like to expand a little bit upon one of the callers earlier mentioned consideration of neighbors of short-term rentals. I happen to be living next door to such a place, although I'm not sure whether they'd be short-term or long-term, but anyway, there's a bunch of young people coming and going all the time, and it could get noisy, and it can diminish my quality of living sometimes when you have a lot of gathering of people on the property. So I'd just like to comment that there should be some consideration for neighbors for this type of operation.
Thank you very much. Okay, back in green sweater, followed by Lucia, virtual participant. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Wilson, and I live in North Vancouver. I noticed that there haven't been many renters speaking this evening, and that's what I am going to speak to. So short-term rentals are meant to be just that, short-term. If someone seeks extended tenancy, there is nothing to stop the homeowner from registering a secondary suite and renting in accordance to the Residential Tenancy Act. My understanding is that there is no minimum lease length under the Residential Tenancy Act, and that a landlord is free to offer a fixed term or month-to-month lease as the situation requires. I'm concerned that without limitations, short-term rentals can be used to circumvent bylaws and provincial legislation applicable to residential tenancy, which provides important protections for both the tenant and the landlord. The number of renters in the District of North Vancouver is increasing, and I think it's critical to ensure that both renters and rental stock are protected. And just speaking, there was a question around research. There was 2024 research, I believe from McGill, on the effects of short-term rental restrictions specific to the city of Vancouver, which restricted short-term rentals in 2018, which found that rents are $147 per month less with the restrictions than they would be without the short-term rental restrictions. So that's over $1,000 a month, or sorry, over $1,000 a year, which is significant for renters. I will note that according to the District of North Vancouver's data, housing data, renters have a much lower median income than homeowners and are much more susceptible to issues with rental stock. So I just really hope that this council will consider renters and rental stock and their needs in this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Stephanie Wilson. Next, we're going to go to Lucia, virtual participant. Lucia.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can. I'm going to get you to speak up nice and loud. It's coming in a little bit soft, but when you're ready to go, welcome. You have 5 minutes to address the public hearing.
Yes, hi. So my name is Lucia, and I live in Lynn Valley. And don't worry, I'm not going to talk about the 28 days. I'm actually going to ramble a little bit because I wasn't prepared, but I just got a text from my friend, and she said you should really speak. So what I do for a living, I work as a dual general manager in downtown hotel. So what that means is I run 2 hotels. And so I would like to talk about the bigger picture in here, because I understand, there are people who want to rent their homes or anything, but I'm talking as a hotelier who, since COVID, we lost 10,000 rooms in downtown Vancouver. So we heavily rely on people renting their homes because we as a whole, as a city, we are unable to attract large conferences because we don't have enough rooms for anybody. I'll give you an example. In July, we're going to have a large conference. It's going to be one of the biggest we ever had in the city. It's Alcoholics Anonymous. When they first signed up in 2012, they assumed there's 40,000 participants coming. But now we're in 2025 and we actually have 60,000 participants. And so when we signed up for this, we kind of had enough hotel rooms, but we actually don't. So what they're doing right now, they actually have to bring 2 cruise lines, 2 cruise ships into the city to help with the congestion of all these people coming. And so us not allowing people to rent their homes, we're not giving ourselves any favors, because we are unable, we now and in the future won't be able to attract anything large into the city that we would want. Like, let's next year, we have FIFA. In order to get a FIFA, all of us in hotels, we had to get together and we had to commit hotel rooms. Well, little did we know at the time that we, after COVID, we're going to lose 10,000 rooms. So FIFA should not really be here because we don't deserve to have a FIFA. We should not have it here. We do not have enough rooms for anyone. And also, just like everybody said, people should have choices. So we as the residents in North Vancouver, we can go to Capilano Suspension Bridge for cheap because we're BC residents. If you have a hotel guest coming from downtown, it's a $300 affair to go see Capilano Bridge. So, or, go skiing in the Grouse Mountains. So we're not really helping businesses in North Vancouver by not allowing Airbnbs. And so this is just going to continue, and unless something's going to happen. So we already feel it for the past 2 years that, I'm happy I can command high prices in my hotel, but it's not sustainable because people already know that Vancouver is overpriced. So who wants to pay $600 for a hotel room in downtown? I mean, when there was a Taylor Swift, I was charging $3,000 a room in a hotel. Me personally, I would not spend more than $300-400 for a hotel room. So right now for AA, we're charging $2,000 a night. That's this is not very hospitable. This is, it's good. I'm making my budget. I'm super happy, but in a big scheme of things, as a larger picture, who's going to come here? We already see. I'm not sure if you saw on the news that the foot traffic into the city now, it's down to COVID levels, right? So US customers are not coming. Airlines are reporting 80% down in their business between Canada and US. And so, more local people are going to be traveling. I highly doubt that somebody from Kelowna would want to pay $600 to stay in downtown Vancouver. So people deserve to have choices. And, we want people to come, not just once and just leave with a bad taste in their mouth. We want people to come and be like, you know what? I loved it. I want to come again. I really liked North Shore, or I really liked, the island, whatever that is. Just like I said, we're shooting ourselves in the foot by not allowing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucia, for your comments. I'm going to take just a moment of break and return back to staff check back in on clarifying questions from council. Again, if you could read it into the record and then your response into the record, please.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. There are 3 additional questions. After 28 days is the only option to be a 1-month long-term rental. Could a long-term rental be for 2 weeks? And I will ask Sarah Tay to answer this question, please.
Through your worship. So the short answer is yes. A rental that is 2 weeks could be a long-term rental. The distinction between a short-term rental and a long-term rental is not days per se, but rather whether or not there is a tenancy agreement in place. And so the contractual relationship is between landlord and tenant, and then governed by the Residential Tenancy Act as opposed to the Short-Term Rental Act.
Mr. Milburn, additional comments?
I just wanted to add for the record, I think there was a comment earlier about consistency with the provincial regulations. So the provincial regulations describe a period of less than 90 consecutive days as being the definition, as was mentioned earlier. Just doing a quick check of other local governments across British Columbia. District of Saanich defines it as less than 30 days. Nanaimo, less than 30 days. Kelowna, 89 days or less. Burnaby, maximum 90 days per calendar year. Richmond, less than 30 consecutive days. Vancouver, less than 90 days. So you can see there's essentially a variety of approaches that have been taken by local governments across the province. And generally it's in that month range or following the provincial order range. So I just wanted to make sure council knew that as part of this record. Thank you.
Apologies if I may. I think there was a reason why we landed on 28 days, if I recall the debate. Do you remember what that originated with?
Yeah, I can help answer that. It's to align with our current bed and breakfast regulations in part. So if we have a different length of stay, that creates an inconsistency, which could cause some challenges with the provincial registry as well.
To align with our bed and breakfast policy. Okay, thank you. Next question, please.
Thank you. The next question, if an operator lists their unit for more than 28 days, what would the district do? Holly Adams.
Through your worship. So the same as any bylaw infraction, if staff are aware, we first seek voluntary compliance. If bylaw enforcement is required, tickets are another option or suspension of a business license. In this case, we can also report to the province if a listing is not in compliance and request to have it removed.
Thank you. Next question.
Thank you. Is the 6 occupants maximum set by the district or the province? Do we have the option to move up to 8 per unit in the future? Holly Adams.
Through your worship, the cap of 6 patrons is a district proposed regulation. So this was based on previous public and council input and trying to strike the right balance in reducing potential negative impacts to neighborhoods, such as noise or parking. We could consider changing this in the future. Staff will be monitoring implementation of our program, certainly, and we can always revisit regulations if they're really not working.
Thank you. And I think that last
Mayor
part
Little,
was addressed in...
Mayor Little, Mike, I can't find the chat anymore. I don't know what's happened. But can I just ask a question? How many bed and breakfasts do we have that are registered in the district?
Through your worship, we have approximately 30.
And what's the difference between a bed and breakfast and a short-term rental?
The main difference is the serving of breakfast must happen with the bed and breakfast.
Does the
And
province...
also the owner would naturally, the operator would naturally be present so that they can carry that out, as well as considered a home-based business in the district.
And short-term rental is not considered a home-based business.
That's correct.
All because one serves breakfast.
And is
there's other reasons as to why it's not, we didn't want to have it under the home occupation category. So there's things like a maximum floor space that would have to be for that home occupation. So it doesn't make sense in the case that the use is over the entire house.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, going to return back to the room. Would anybody else like to add their comments to the meeting? John Gilmore, come on up. Again, virtual participants, if you want to raise your virtual hand. If we have people calling in, we're going to put the slide back up again for how you can call in although at this point in the meeting, you probably either are called in or are not going to hear that. So there you go. So welcome, John Gilmore. You have 5 minutes to address the public hearing.
Yeah, John Gilmore, Lynn Valley. I have a couple of comments, and one is if the DNB is forced to come up with the regulations, I think they should be as minimized as possible. I think that society these days is so overregulated, and the current provincial government loves to throw out regulations. So I understand that we have to do that in the district to regulate short-term rentals, but I just think we should do the bare minimum and not go overboard with additional regulations that are that we can come up with. It's great to have regulations where it provides more safety, but I don't see a lot of these proposed regulations to be considered at public hearing on this paper here. So, for example, 1 license per single family property. So I'm not sure where the safety or the security is with if somebody has a large house and they put 2 Airbnbs in there or short-term rentals. I don't see what the issue would be personally if they have a house that works for it. And no non-market or caretaker housing. I don't know what that exactly means. So it seems to me that that's something that could be waived. No RV trailers or accessory units. If there's a driveway that you could park an RV in or a trailer, I've got a driveway that's 11 feet wide. My wife's uncle parked his motorhome in that driveway for a couple of months because the family member was ill and visiting, and it wasn't a problem at all for us or the neighbors, and not in combination with a B&B. Again, why that restriction? I don't see what the issue is. And the 28 days thing, I think that seems like a very big issue with most people in the room. And I think we should just put it with the same with the city of North Van at 90 days or 89, whatever. And provision of 1 off-street parking space. I have spoken to a few people in the community, and number of people have said that your Airbnb or short-term rental people are typically coming by Uber or taxi, and they don't really need a parking space. So those are my comments on these proposed regulations. And I just think we're, again, over-regulated, and whatever the minimum is, let's go with that and not add to the paper burden on the community.
Thank you for your comments, John Gilmore. Okay, I do see a second-time speakers put their virtual hand up. I have to exhaust the first-time speakers list before I go to second-time speakers, so we're not quite there yet. Well, maybe we are, I don't know. Would anybody else like to address the hearing for a first time? Okay, seeing, yes, please come on down. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 5 minutes to address the hearing. If you could start with your name and approximate address or neighborhood, that would be helpful.
Tanis Baldwin, I live in Upper Lonsdale, and I'll be way less than 5 minutes. It seems to me that a lot of the speakers are talking about this 28 days. And I think that council should really look at whether that makes sense. You're going to be spending a lot of time regulating this, putting in different things to address it. I think you need to really weigh that against the positive, like why is it that you're doing the 28 days, and find out what's going to work best, because you're going to be going through an awful lot of work to try to keep it to 28 days. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments, Tanis Baldwin. Okay, would anybody else like to address the hearing for a first time? Okay, so we're going to open it up to first and second time speakers. I have virtual speaker M. Kaler. We can move them over as a panelist. That'd be great. Followed by Corey Cost, also a second time speaker.
Can you hear me?
M. Kaler, can you hear me?
Yes, all good.
Welcome. You have 5 minutes to address the public hearing for a second time.
Thank you so much. So yeah, and thank you for organizing this public hearing. It's very actually insightful to see that other people have exactly the same concerns and feel also the same pain. I've heard also some comments around being able actually to rent a place in North Shore, and I've been a renter before, of course. And yes, I had actually less revenues when I was a renter, also because it was costing less to be a renter. When we actually move to invest our life saving into a house, especially in District of North Vancouver, and we see all the taxes, all the costs of renovation, we had actually to accumulate, like I mentioned, we accumulate in our family 4 jobs, including the Airbnb, to be able to afford all of that and continue to renovate and keep up with people's reviewing your listing and saying like this and that and making sure that everything is perfect for them. So I think the council needs to also understand that we are not here actually to remove anything from the renter perspective. We are here because we're trying to survive in this STR and because we don't we cannot basically move things into long term, because long term is actually much easier than short term. But if we need our space for something else or for renovation, we don't want actually to go back to a tenant every few months and say, oh, I have actually to free up the unit because I have a renovation coming and they are actually on the streets. This is not something that people want to do. So not allowing actually 2 suites, I really feel that we are punished by the district because this is not what the province recommended. We are not like a business. We are not actually trying to like open a hostel or something. We're just trying actually to make our revenue to make sure that we can afford living here. And I would like also to welcome the council to make sure they're actually deciding those bylaws based on real scientific data. Because I haven't seen anything saying like we're limiting to 1 unit per family. Will actually give you like X amount of long-term units in North Vancouver or decrease the rent in North Vancouver. I don't think this is actually something I ever seen. I'm not sure you're actually basing these decisions on scientific data, but more on feelings. And I don't think also that because we actually have the label of homeowners, that we should be not respected, because we have the burden of the financial investment that we do, plus all the taxes we pay every year. And we are here for a long term. We are not renters that can actually go to City of Northern Vancouver or West Vancouver or any other cities. We are here for a long term. We invest our time, our effort, and money in this place, and we trust the district to make the right decision for us on a long-term basis, because we believe this is where our family needs to be. So I just want to make sure that people understand it is concerned and are compassionate enough to really weigh the impact of their decisions on multiple families that is trying to survive during this time, especially in a time where people will be losing their job across the country, and a time where people actually trying to make at least enough to survive and get through this period. And we are not going to address housing crisis by limiting Airbnb in District of North Vancouver. We already all know that this is a problem of supply and demand that has been long discussed with a lot of politics at every level. So I don't think that we should just push an agenda that has no foundation in terms of scientific evidence, but really care about the residents of North Shore that are investing their time, financial and hearts into the district. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your comments. M. Kaler. Next speaker I have is virtual participant Corey Cost, followed by Florian Mandit, and I believe second time speaker Margaret. Corey Cost, your comments, please.
Yes, Your Worship. Well, the 28-day limit and the abutting possibilities of having 2 or more consecutive ones equally applies to 90 days. People could have 90 days and then some other signature goes in and extends it by another 90 days and avoids the more onerous Tenancy Act that way. So whether it's 28 days or anything, any number of days up to 90, they are all the same weakness in the legislation of being rented consecutively. Now, as I mentioned before, safety was an issue that I was doing for smoke alarms, and an equal item for safety is the fire extinguishers. I've gone through them as well. Surprisingly, fire extinguishers can be quite heavy, and the elderly, if they occupy short-term rentals, might have difficulties with them. So I caution the fire extinguishing rules should be dealt with in a more holistic way, because they can be problematic, especially if you cannot handle them with the people who are coming into short-term rentals. The earthquake evacuation notices that you find in almost all hotels, I assume, are in the short-term rentals units as well. That's another issue that should be addressed if it hasn't been already. And on the issue of families, I want to be assured that if I bring members of my family, and I have a fairly large number of which are related by family, and if I have them in my home, I shouldn't have to get a short-term rental to have their vacation here. There's no clarity on that issue, as there was at the time when my late father-in-law was living in the basement here, and quite happily, that's been going on for generations, and all of a sudden, sorry, but your housing got to be brought up to date when you're having people in your house that are also helping to pay the rent. Now, the next issue is a family member considered a tenant or not under your regulations? I'd like to see a clear definition there. So I hope that exhausts my seemingly never-ending series of questions that open up during the public hearing, but I'm hoping that it will make life easier for both the renters and the people who have to pass the legislation. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Corey Cost. Next speaker I have is Florian Mandit.
Hi, good evening. Thank you very much for all the information. I think we can all agree that having regulation and based on what the provincial bylaws are asking, it's fair. I think what we all asking is to have the right as homeowner who
Florian, we can't hear you. You are marked as unmuted, but maybe you're having some connectivity issue. That's what it's telling us, is that your connection.
Oh, sorry. I'm gonna.
Yeah. Oh, you try again, go ahead. Very sorry, I'm getting the signal that you have a low Wi-Fi connection to the system. So I'm going to go to another speaker and we'll come back to you, Florian. We're going to go to another speaker and we'll see if your Wi-Fi improves. But at this point, it is giving us a warning that you have a very low connection. So I'm going to move on to speaker Margaret, and then we'll circle back to Florian Mandit. Margaret, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I would like to maybe council to consider changing the bed and breakfast to 89 days, as there's only 30 of them in the district, to align maybe with the provincial regulations, if that might be an option. You know, since there's not a lot of bed and breakfasts, instead of making it 28 days and matching the Airbnb to the bed and breakfast, maybe match the bed and breakfast to the 90-day provincial rule. And also, I know there was one counselor that brought up different areas of, you know, some are 28 days, some are 30, whatever. It seems that City of Vancouver, Burnaby, City of North Vancouver are all in line with the 90-day provincial rule. And that's why the 90 days is really important to the people in the district of North Van, so that we can stay competitive with the other areas that we're attached to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to check back in with Florian Mandit. I don't know if you can hear me. Maybe your connection has improved. Can you hear me?
Yes, my apology for the technical issue. I just wanted to explain, like, we kind of needed some clarification why the district is implementing even more heavy ruling compared to what the provincial is asking from us. And we don't, I think, understand the reason why behind, like a previous speaker saying, where are the data? As the DNV done a report on, for example, I know we have about 958 operational short-term rental listing in the district, and how many have caused nuisance or issues with parking spots, or how many complaints has been received regarding short-term rental to justify all of these extra rules that the district seems to be implementing on homeowners. And that's what we would need more clarification to understand. And like the person who just spoke said, if everybody else is allowed to have up to 90 days during summertime, we have a lot of families from abroad who wants to visit Vancouver for more than a month. Some people are doing some renovation in your neighborhood and need a house for their families until the renovation is finished. Or similar as when we had this big flood happening a few months ago and a lot of families needed to do their renovation, needed a place for a couple of months until insurance solved their issue. We would be penalized, and everybody would try to find other listing on the city of North Vancouver, but why the district itself has to suffer from this specific ruling of the 28 days and the one of the two listing. If there could be some explanation on why the council is thinking this is beneficial for the district compared to everywhere else in Vancouver, that would be really helpful. But thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your comments, Florian Mandit. I have a virtual participant. It just says H. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Would love to get your name for the benefit of our record keeping, and if you could perhaps tell us your approximate address or neighborhood, that would also help us. But welcome, you have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Thank you. My name is Henry, and I live in the Pemberton Heights area. My comment to the council is to please reconsider the minimum one off-street parking requirement for the short-term rentals. The reason I say this because you know, in our neighborhood, there is increased densification, which has caused a lot of a shortage in actually on-street parking even in my neighborhood. And where I live right now, I don't have an on-street parking spot for my home due to where I am and also the area. So, and the good thing about that is I am actually very close to all the transit hubs. So, you know, having this requirement would limit similar homes like mine who do not have on-street parking to move their cars and very limited off-street parking for the homeowner itself. So I'd like the council to reconsider that. And also it would promote people to use transit, our public transit system here in North Vancouver. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, at this point, I don't have anyone else in our speakers list, so I'm just going to check back in with staff and see, have you received any additional clarifying questions from the council?
You're done.
We have not at this point, Your Worship.
Microphone.
not-
Microphone, and Mr. Milburn
Thank
does
you.
have a comment. But
We have not yet received other questions at this moment.
okay. I'm ragging the puck. I can see Councillor Murray's typing a question. So
Thank you, Mayor Little. I'm typing.
Mr. Milburn.
Yes,
you have a
thank you. I appreciate the ability to come back in. A point of clarification. There was a question raised earlier in the night about whether or not a subsequent amendment to the bylaw may trigger the need for further public hearing. When considering that, Council under the Act, it's Section 470 of the Local Government Act, procedures after public hearing, Council may adopt or defeat a bylaw and alter and then adopt the bylaw. There is one caveat to that, and that is provided that the alteration does not do any of the following: alter the use, increase the density, or without the owner's consent, decrease the density. So depending upon the language of the recommended amendment that Council recommends at second reading, if it falls under the category of altering use or increasing the density or potentially decreasing the density, then it may require a subsequent public hearing. And so the question was 28 days versus 90 days. When looking at the regulation closer, it appears that it's falling under the definition of short-term rental accommodation, means the use of a dwelling unit or one or more bedrooms in a dwelling unit as temporary accommodation rented to a person or persons for a period not exceeding 28 consecutive days, but does not include a bed and breakfast or accommodation provided to boarders and lodgers. So it is possible, after we consult with our legal counsel, that the alteration that was raised by council to modify from 28 days to 90 days could be interpreted as altering the use necessitating a new public hearing. So I just wanted to raise that point of clarification.
No,
that's a procedural issue, but the consequence is neither here nor there in terms of ultimately council's expectation needs to be reflected in the bylaw at the end of the day.
I appreciate the warning. That would probably put some of the timeline in jeopardy at that point, and so probably would be the preferential situation to proceed with the bylaw as written and then make a future amendment unless, but again, that's at council's discretion.
Mayor
I
Little,
do
can we
see
just
there's-
ask one more question in regards to that, though?
Yes, but again, he said, Mr. Milburn has said that he needs to speak to legal counsel about it before he gives a definitive response. So what's your question, Councilor?
Well, my question would be, I don't understand why density is impacted by length. Excuse
I
me.
think he's suggesting that this is the definition of the use, and it's the use that's being varied because it is the definition of a short-term rental usage is 28 days, the way it is written. And so he just wants to get a referral to see if changing that number effectively changes the use, in which case we would have to issue a second public hearing on the matter. It's not as simple as an amendment by council at that point.
Okay, so
But
my
we'll-
point.
We'll get that clarification for council.
Okay, but my point is that the province identifies a short-term rental as 90 days. So
The province's definition of short-term rental is not the same as ours. That's correct.
A period less than 90 days.
a period of less than 90 days. So, I mean, that's the province's legislation, so I think it would trump ours. So I'm not, I hope that we're going to, implement common sense in regards to this 28 versus 90. So I hope we don't have to start this all
So
over again.
let's not debate the matter at this time, but I appreciate your comments on it. I do believe Councillor Murray has submitted an additional question.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Is there a variance process for residents that can't accommodate all requirements as the previous speaker mentioned parking? Holly Adams.
Through your worship, we could technically take in a zoning bylaw variance for parking. But I do want to mention the regulation is quite flexible. It's just provision of a parking space. So this could be the owner or tenant's dedicated space while they're gone. And that was to acknowledge that often the homeowner might be away and then they have a guest coming to stay. As long as this is demonstrated on the submitted parking plan and that's part of the business license.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Little, could I ask one more question in regards to this legal opinion that Mr. Milburn needs to get? Can
We'll
we
do our
not?
best to respond, but again, we'll probably have to take it away, but go ahead.
So is there no way that we can give direction while this public hearing is open right now?
It was advertised with different uses identified.
Okay, I just really need to understand the definition of use because to me, it's the length of time. It's not the use. It's still short-term rental. It's just the length of time. I don't understand
generally
why
agree with
that.
you on that,
I know, I'll
Councillor.
phone you tomorrow. In fact, I'll phone you if this closes on your way home. Thanks.
You get a call anyway.
Your worship, we can have that clarification available if the 28 days is a use. It is currently included within the use definition.
Because it's in the definition.
And so I double checked that clarification in the bylaw itself. We would look to legal clarification, but we could provide that at second reading.
And there may be a pragmatic response to that if that is the desire. We have not polled council if there's an interest in that, but you could maybe strike our definition and rely on the provincial definition. Maybe that would be different, but a different way to go at it. But I'll let legal counsel dig into that. I see no further clarifications from council at this time, so I'm going to return back to the public. Okay, and from the public, I saw a hand in the back, and then I've got two in the front. So Jeanette Nielsen, if you want to come back down.
Jeanette Nelson, Mount Seymour Parkway. I'm really glad I came to the second meeting because I have a better understanding of this 28-day booking. When I spoke last month, I recommended 28 days, but I thought the idea was that you could extend to 90 days. 28 days is too limiting. It's especially we're in competition on bookings for this whole West Vancouver, the city of Vancouver. So I really think that you should really look at this. It's 28 days, it's too limiting. The second thing is at the last meeting, Mayor Little, you mentioned that you had bought a house in 1991 with 3 suites in it. I bought a house with 3 suites in it in 1996, and I operated as such long-term. When I was doing my renovation a few years ago, I was advised by the district I had to take out the 3rd kitchen. Therefore, I have a large suite, which is basically, restrictive in the sense that I could either rent the lower part or the main part. And that worked quite well. But the restriction is it could only be 1 family. So I really think you should advocate for the option that two licenses in special circumstances would be helpful for helping people who need accommodation, for contractors, students, and all of it. So that's all I really wanted to add. But other than that, this has been good. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Gentleman over here.
Again, my name is Hamid K from Lynn Valley. I just want to say, I know we worked this 28 days to death, but I want to say, I want the council and your worship to understand, hopefully, how Airbnb works. Somebody wants to book from the interior. They don't come to see the place. They need some place for 35 days. They don't come to see the place. They rely on platforms like Airbnb to book. And if you don't allow that, we're just putting some revenue on the table. The tax that goes to the, I don't know, it goes to the BC or to the district, I have no idea. And we're not accommodating those people. People who are local, they just come and find places. They go to Craigslist, they come see places. They don't use Airbnb. It's the people who are not here and they rely on a brand of Airbnb, their reviews, things like that, to book a place. So they're gonna be disenfranchised if we do this 28 days. And they don't have any recourse between 28 days and 90 days for District of North Vancouver. regardless of what the other cities have done. I don't know what they've thought about, but this is actually doesn't affect the operators. I don't think much the hosts. It's just a convenience for the people. I mean, how many people are doing that versus short term? It's very small number, but it just affects the people who want to come to this city, to this district and find it hospitable. Another thing I want to mention is that you have good operators and you have bad or hosts, we call it good hosts and bad hosts. So this whole thing with number of people in the units, number of units, once somebody has a business license, I guess it's up to them to not let people go have a party in the yard and have, smoke marijuana and bother the neighbors. And of course, neighbors have a recourse to come first talk to that person and then come to the city and complain. So I'm hoping we don't have all these artificial barriers and let the community police, first of all, the host police themselves, number one. And number two, the neighbors can complain. There's a business license on the line, and it could be taken away if it determined that there's some issues with, let's say, noise or overcrowding. So allow the host who lives there, who's a principal residence, by the way, that's a requirement, to police it, number one, and let the community police it as well. Okay. Thank you, Your Lordship, Council. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you for your comments, Hamid. Yes, Eddie up front.
My name is Eddie from Lynn Valley. Once again, I want to thank for giving me the second opportunity to talk. Still, this issue is a little confusion for me. For less than 28 days when get license, is everything okay? This is just for extending for more than 28 days, right? So I want to know if to resolve this problem for the time being, if the council decided to extend, that would be great. If not, is it possible to remove the 1 day between two consecutive booking, as that lady mentioned, to wait 1 day and then after 28 days, then book? So I mean, is it possible to remove that 1 day in between? So end of the term of the 28 days, the tenant or the short-term tenant can rebook for another 28 days if they decided to stay. Is it possible to do that in favor of the people, to accommodate that? And the suite for the short term required to be a legal suite or regular suite is okay? This is my another question. What document usually you require for the registration? Is it possible to put on the website in advance to prepare the document for the registration of the short term? Because the timeline is tight, and then we wanted to prepare, everyone want to prepare the documentation to be ready and do the job on time properly. So is it possible to put the document list there? And then during the time they apply for registration, people apply, applicant apply, are they allowed to continue booking, or they have to stop booking to get the application result?
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir.
Okay, would anybody else? Yes, come on up.
My name is Gordon Baldwin. I live in Upper Lonsdale. I've been a resident in North Vancouver for over 60 years. There's been a lot of issues brought up here or brought to your attention. And I just want to say thank you very much for, I think, taking the right road now. The original proposals I thought were horrific, and I think common sense has taken hold here. And I think that, and I have a vested interest because we do run an Airbnb. From that experience, I think a lot of the things that are proposed now make a lot of sense. We are very conscious of our neighbors, And I think that having multiple units on it could lend to abuse of many people on the property. We are very tight with who we let rent in our house, and we do reject people because of the reviews that we get. We try to stay away from people that stay at what we call Airbnb hotels, which are multi-unit properties, and the guests, the front desk gives glowing reviews, and it's not really a good insight to what the person's like. The parking, I think, is a good thing. I know that we needed it to get legal suites. My son and I, or us, we have a legal suite and we had to have parking. I think that's good. Just it addresses the local issues that people have about parking, this perceived abuse of parking spaces by these short-term rentals. And I tell people that the reality is, as someone has mentioned here before, most of them take Ubers or taxis. And at most, we've only had one car per person. So I don't think parking is really an issue, but it makes the neighborhood feel better about it. The one thing about Airbnbs is that if there is a bad apple situation, it's dealt with quickly, or can be, through the Airbnb operation and actually getting the police involved in a very quick manner. So again, you're not going to have someone hanging around a long time if they're a bad apple in the suite or the unit that they're occupying. One thing that was raised in a previous meeting that I thought was kind of an interesting one, partly because we were a hockey family or in the past, is the concept of someone living in it as a principal residence. I would be concerned that there could be abuse of that term. And we've seen it, like people trying to get their kid into a different hockey district and things like that. So I'm not sure if you can tighten that up or just wait for a complaint or something like that. But the 90-day rule, I find it ironic that the whole thing came about here because of wanting more long-term rentals. Well, to my mind, a 90-day stay at a short-term rental is a long-term rental. So it's accomplishing what the whole thing was about to begin with. So we've never had more than, oh, I don't even know, probably maybe 3 weeks of a person, and that was during COVID. So 90 days, if it helps people, and I can understand. We did have a lot of people for renovations, and we had a lot of people for. We don't have a lot of people for hospitals because we're not near the hospital. It's more a Vancouver or North Vancouver City thing, I think. But anyway, I think that going to 90 days, I don't see any harm in it personally. If it can be done legally without having the expense of another public hearing and all that, great. But I mean, maybe just do the 28 just to get it done, because we have that May 1st axe hanging over our heads. So, you know, just go push through the 28 if you have to, but get something done because we need it to get registered. And as I say, I just want to thank the staff and the council here for sort of seeing the light in my mind, and good on you, and hopefully things will go smoothly from this point on. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Bert Walden. Okay, are there any other speakers, a first or second time? Looking to virtual participants, I don't see any virtual participant hands for a first or second time. I'm gonna open it up to a first, second, or third time. I see Corey Koss virtual hand. Okay. So Dr. Koss, just before I go to you, I will just say that a third and final speaking opportunity is offered, but we really want you to be sure that you're not repeating previous comments or previous statements. New information only, please. You have 5 more minutes to address the hearing.
Well, it won't take any near time. I think I mentioned the 90 days, but others have restricted the total number of days you can have short-term rentals. And you should be aware of the data that flows from other municipal deciders on this matter. So I would hope that to not see the use of the home 365 days a year as a short-term rental. I think it's just pushing the envelope too much, but it's for council's consideration that I make this statement. Now, I hope you will consider limiting, as some other municipalities have, the total number of short-term rental days. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Cost. I don't see any further speakers at this point, a first, second, or third time, virtual or in person. Yes. Again, this is your third time speaking, so please no repeats of what you've previously said.
Yes, as was stated here, I urge the council
Or
to
Hamid K. from
Hamid K,
Lynn
yes,
Valley. There you go. Thank you.
to approve without this 28-day, because we don't want to miss the time, for licensing and all that. That could come as a, future thing. As I said, it's not I don't think it's like maybe 1% of the, I don't know what, a small percent of guests would, fall into this category. So I hope it's not something that would delay this process here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, would anybody else like to address the meeting first, second, or third time? Okay, I'm going to double check with staff. Have any additional questions come in? And if so, can you read them into the record and your response, please?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Is there a maximum number of rentable days? Holly Adams.
Through your worship, no, this isn't a type of license cap being considered.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, and do you have any other questions that have been submitted?
I see no other questions, Your Worship.
Okay, so I see we've sort of wrapped on the number of comments coming in, and so I have to formally exhaust the speakers list. Seems a little archaic, but for a first time, would anybody else like to address the hearing? Yes. Yes, you would like to address, come on up, sit, and if you could start with your name and approximate neighborhood or address for the record, that'd be appreciated.
Yes, my name is Zahra Salehi, and I live 5199 Cliffridge Avenue in North Vancouver. 1 month ago, sorry, my English is not perfect. 1 month ago, I start Airbnb for my home. I have a 4-bedroom and then bed and breakfast. And they sent me email after May 1st, everything going to cancel. And then I wanted to try for license, they not let me. They say you can't. And I'm here to see what happened. And I'm asking, maybe they let us to continue to help the mortgage.
Unfortunately, I can't get into the specifics of your case here in the public hearing. I can put you in contact with our staff to follow up and make sure that we understand. So Holly Adams on the end, maybe if you can just grab her email address or phone number, that would be helpful to follow up on your specific case. Thank you very much. I saw another hand over in the corner here. Come on up. Again, welcome. If you can start with your name and approximate address or neighborhood, that'd be great. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Susan Romeo Gilbert, and I live in Blue Ridge in North Van. And we just registered for our Airbnb, as a full bed and breakfast. There are two things that I want to ask for consideration. One is off-road parking or on-site parking. For the bed and breakfast, it's 1 per unit or 1 per bed room, sorry. With the 1 per bedroom, if you only have you have to have 2 parking spots if you're renting 2 bedrooms in your house. If you have If you have 3 rooms that you can rent, then you have to have 3 parking spots that are on site. And that limits very much so most folks who do have off-site parking, where the legal suites are 1 parking spot per unit, and the short-term rental is now, I'm seeing 1 parking spot. So regardless of how many rooms you have, we probably need to bring everything in line, because if you are doing a bed and breakfast, you're now required to have 1 parking spot in your driveway for every single room that you want to rent. That's 1. Secondly, if we were to do a 90-day for the short-term rental, could we bring the bed and breakfast in line with that 90-day so that you can have a max of 90 days for the bed and breakfast as well, rather than having the 90-day be 28 days and the short-term rental be 90 days? So we need to look at the bed and breakfast side and bring everything in line, because I can provide breakfast for 90 days if someone so wishes. So that's just the 2 things that I'd like to sort of bring in line, so that we are not disadvantaged, I suppose, if we do offer breakfast to people who want to stay up to 90 days.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Go back to exhausting the speakers list. This includes virtual participants as well. For a first time, would anybody else like to address the hearing? For a second time, would anybody else like to address the hearing? For a third and final time, yes, come on up. Yes, you have to come up to the desk though, just so we can get it on the record.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for, my name is Richard. I'm also living in the same neighborhood as my wife in Blue Ridge. I just wanted to clarify something with the, I guess the rules regarding the bed and breakfast. What my wife was alluding to in terms of the 1 car per room. In our situation, we have a unit that would be rented out. We wouldn't have different groups in that unit, even though it has 3 rooms. We would be renting it whether they wanted. They could take 1 room. We'd probably just close the other rooms. We could do 2 rooms, and we were hoping we could do 3. But we're limited, even though it's 1 separate unit. They're not actually, the upstairs and downstairs are connected. So we're, in terms of the regulations, it is part of the house. It just happened to be, it's connected to the upstairs and so on. And we used to have our sons down there. They all have now moved out. But I'm limited to the number of rooms we can rent out based on the number of on-site parking we have. And we actually have a lot of space in our driveway. It must be a big limit for other people, because we have built our house to the new building code, which required that we have a full turnaround and so on, and enough spaces in front, which is a lot more space than most of the older houses have. But even with that extra space, we still don't have enough parking. But if it's rented as a unit, I don't see 3 cars coming to rent the 1 unit. There'll probably be 1. So I just thought it was a little bit of an overkill. We happen to have a completely enclosed rental suite. Again, when we built it, we were only required by the building code to have 1 space for that 2-bedroom unit. So I couldn't understand why I would be required to have more than that for the other unit, which was connected to the house, which could be the B&B. So that was really the issue. Because right now I've got a room I can't rent, And I've got a limit of the number of people, 4 people, when the unit could easily hold more. So that was all I wanted to recommend, that if there could be any adjustments to the limit on or to the regulation regarding the number of on-site parking I need, instead of being per room, if it could recognize the fact that it's actually just 1 unit, and the other rooms will just go to waste if, or the third room will just go to waste if, because I can't rent it, and I probably can't even give people access to it even if they wanted to. So that's all I really wanted to clarify.
Thank you very much for your comments, Richard.
Mayor Little, maybe we could put them in touch with staff as well, because I think they have some different questions that.
Yes, I mean, it's hard to get into the specifics of a particular
know.
property, and so I'd recommend you talk to staff about your specific case. What's contemplated for the council as it's written is not really intended to be a change for the bed and breakfast regulations. It's focused on the short-term rental side of it, but so I would recommend you get in touch with staff and discuss your specific situation. Okay, so I'm going to go back to exhausting the speakers list. So for a first time, would anybody else like to address the hearing? For a second time, would anybody else like to address the hearing? For a third and final time, would anybody else like to address the hearing? Okay, we'll say to the clerk that we have exhausted the speakers list at this point. Looking to members of council, Councillor Murray, do you have a motion?
Mayor Little, I move that we close this public hearing and return this bylaw to council.
Thank you very much. That's been moved. Is there a seconder on the matter? Councillor Ma, I'm prepared to call the question on that. All in favor? Contrary minded, motion is carried. Check in with the clerk. Do we have an anticipated date for when this item would come back?
Through you, your worship, the anticipated date is the special meeting on April 14th.
April
second and third
14th is
reading.
our intended date. You do have to monitor our agendas leading up to that time in case other community matters end up bumping it or something else like that. That's our intended date, is April 14th. I will also have a bit of a further discussion. So this matter is now closed. And so what that means is that the council's received the information that they need to make their decision based on. So between here and that time, actually between here and adoption of this particular item, council's not permitted to receive any additional new information on this matter. The information they've received is what they make their decisions based upon. And so you'll get the benefit of council's discussion and debate at second and third reading when that matter comes back. Again, intended date is April 14th. Council, we've completed the business of this evening's public hearing. I'll accept adjournment. Accepted from Councillor Forbes. And oh, did you want me to make a comment on the business bylaw? Oh, I'll declare that that's both the public hearing and the public meeting are closed and intend to be returned together at that time. That's fine. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, Councillor Ma, or Councillor Forbes, you proposed adjournment. I accept. Thank you very much. Thank you to council for your presentation, or to staff for your presentation tonight. Thank you to council for listening, and thank you to members of the public for taking time out of your evening to share your concerns on this item. Have a great night.